Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 10/3/2022, and today is the Odin Project Blog Day 152. And I have completed, uh, entered into the intermediate Git section and completed a deeper look at Git module of the JavaScript course. Um, it's, it's a little bit of humble pie I had to eat on this one. Um, so going into this, I already knew that I didn't know a lot about Git, just scratching the surface of its capability, uh, based on what we've learned so far, and coming across a couple issues early on that I had to work through on my own with some googling, really early on when I first started Foundations. But boy, this was humble pie for sure. This showed me how little I knew of what I thought I knew, if that makes sense, of Git. So it's a good read. Take your time with it. I probably could stand to read it again and gain more information from it, but don't skip any of the information. I won't go through the text here, other than the knowledge base or the knowledge check. But follow along, because in here they have you doing a bunch of running a bunch of commands and creating a fake repo and playing with that repo. As far as acting like it's a remote repo and working with your local repo on your workstation. So definitely good meat and potato stuff here. Don't skip it. It is pretty wordy, but it reads pretty fast because you're actually doing stuff with it along with it. It's not just bland reading like I thought it was going to be myself personally. But yeah. And then you get down here to the assignments. There's two assignments. There's this GitHub documentation on merge conflicts. I went ahead and read through that. I encourage you to do that as well, and make sure you hit up the further reading. I went ahead and read the other four articles there. Didn't know if you're supposed to or not because the documentation isn't really that big on that. It's a little section, so I went ahead and read those. And then this was really good. Think like a Git. This was good. So go through this, and it actually goes through each one of these. It's not a long read, but take your time with it. It'll help cement and further understanding of Git and the different processes. Um, and a part of the before we get into knowledge check, it is overwhelming to read through this, especially if you don't even know. Like, part of the stuff I wasn't even sure what they're even talking about because I have a hard time visualizing it in my head as I was reading it. And so part of the text here, I think Oden says it, that some of this stuff don't get you definitely want a good understanding of it right now, but don't wrap your mind around the axle, stressing out about it if you don't understand everything. Because just like riding a bike, this is stuff you're going to learn as you come across it. And as I've said before in other videos a long time ago, sometimes you learn your best, or at least I learn my best when I get stuck on something, because that's when the real learning happens. And I think that's a lot of the case here with Git. There's so much to it. And then it also depends on the policies of your company you end up working for. So they may have policies in place for how you use Git, what you use Git for. You can actually customize the Git workflow to further enhance and streamline your business line and your offering, and how your development team works in it. So and that's set up by the admins of the Git repo. So or the organization Git organization organizational account. So yeah, so just saying, understand it, learn it, do the best you can, and just know that you'll be coming back to this when you get stuck. Maybe not this, but the Git material, their documentation, and maybe some googling. So without further ado on that, let's just go through the knowledge check, and then we'll end this video. So the first one says, how can you amend your last commit? So one of the things, and I mentioned this a while back as a gripe, I guess, against Odin, if I had to have one. It looks like it happened here again. You see my hovering here. This goes to Git SCM. This goes to Git SCM. The first two do anyway, and I think there's another one that does. Those actually are not part of the required reading. The GitHub IO document here is required, and then the Think Like a Git's required. The rest this is just additional resources, but they put all of the additional resource material of Git SCM inside of the additional. So I didn't read those because I normally don't read the additional resources. So if you did, you'll find this a lot easier to answer than someone like me who didn't actually read this part. We got it covered through the text and through these two links, but it wasn't directly covered, obviously. So we're just going to go through it real quick. I just want to caveat that in case I'm stumbling around a little bit. That's why. It's because the Git SCM wasn't included in the requirements. So the first one is, how can you amend your last comment? So basically you can do that with the Git Commit Amend. This was covered in our required readings as well, so no sweat there. Use that Git Commit Amend excuse me, to it allows you to amend your most recent comment and make a change to it. In case you and it's the one that's in your stage, not the one after you've pushed. It's prior to the push. So if you have something in your staged area, this is what it's going to reach out to. Sorry about that. My Tourette's is active. So we have the initial commit here. Here's an example: add forgotten file, and then commit amend, and then you can end up with a single commit. The second commit replaces the results of the first. Just giving an example, and this goes over a ton of different examples, and you can go very knee deep with this. So I'm not going to. I'm just going to answer that quick question there. You can read this on your own if you'd like. What are some different ways to rewrite history? So, basically you can rewrite history with changing the last commit, like we just talked about with the commit amend command. You can change multiple commit messages via using the rebase command, or conversely, you can reorder your commits in rebase by either deleting it, or copying, pasting, moving it around, and saving the file out through rebase. You can squash your commits, which is combining what is kind of basically what it sounds like. You can take a series of commits and squash them and make them into a single commit with the interactive rebasing tool that we're shown here, and you just follow basically the syntax commands there to do that. It's pretty easy. We actually worked through that in the throughout the module here, or the module. So you should be familiar with that. Splitting, you can split. We didn't really cover. I don't recall covering this in the material really too much. I don't think we did anything at the command line as practice, but basically you would change the line to edit. And then splitting a commit undoes a commit, and then partially stages and commits as many times as commits you want to end up with. Suppose you want to split the middle commit into 3 commits. Instead of updating, formatting, and add blame, you would split into 2 commits. Okay, yeah. So you just edit it, and then change it from pick to edit, and then you can do your update readme formatting for your commit message, and then you can add your new file that you want to add in, and then split that commit into, and then add the commit blame for the message there, and then rebase continue will basically save it out, save your changes out. So you can split, and then obviously you can delete, which is drop. Use the drop inside of rebase to delete a comment. What is a safe way to push history changes to a remote repo? And this just goes back up here to the top stuff. You can use the -- force with lease command switch with the git push command, and this some companies use this as a default option, which is probably a good idea. It's a failsafe. Basically, it checks if the branch you're attempting to push to has been updated and sends you an error if it has. This gives you the opportunity, as mentioned before, to fetch the work and update your local repo. So basically, if your local repo has gotten behind, you could do a fetch and an update, and that will allow you to get your local tree back up to par, and then you could do your git push, and then you won't get and it'll force with the lease, and you won't get an error. So that's cool. That keeps you from making a grave mistake like losing data for you and or your colleagues if you're using a remote repo on a team. So that's that. What are the dangers of history-changing operations? Goes back up here into Odin here. What are the dangers of history-changing operations? So if you're working, they can destroy your coworkers' work that you've created. So keep that in mind. When attempting to rewrite history, always check the dangers of the particular command you're using and follow best practices for the command. And they kind of have some sub-bullets here. If you're working on a team, make sure everybody knows what you're doing and make sure that it's you know what you're doing and it's safe. Ideally, stick these commands only on branches that you're working on by yourself. So, like I mentioned earlier, your local branches will be fine because if you nuke something, you're only nuking your own version of it. And even that, I mean, that's still bad, obviously, but you can recover from that and or not create a fool of yourself if you nuked your teammates' code, or worse yet, you broke your production code. Use the F switch flag to force something you should scare you, and you should be better have a good reason for using it. That I agree with that. Yeah, anytime you're using a force something, except minus the force with least, but anytime you use the word force, you should be mindful of what you're doing. And I have to admit to this one probably a little bit, but don't push after every single commit. Changing published history should be avoided when possible. And I understand that. I mean, cluttering up your production changes and that published history section publicly is probably not the greatest idea and makes it hard to follow. And talks about git amend. For git amend, never amend comments have been pushed to remote repos. We already went over that. For git rebase, never rebase a repo that others may work off of again. Be mindful of what you're doing and where you're doing it and who it might affect. Resets, never reset commits that have been pushed to remote. Again, the theme is if you do not do this to remote repos unless you absolutely know what you're doing and your teammates know what you're doing. And again, force, use only when appropriate. Use it with caution. Preferably use the force with least. That way you get that catch that we talked about a little bit ago. And that actually answers the next question too. What's best practice of history-changing operations? And then the last one is explain what it means for branches to be pointers. So this goes out again to the Git SCM that we didn't cover if you didn't read the extra material. So basically, branching in a nutshell, to answer it from what I remember, branches are pointers because anything's really a pointer. Branches point to commits. Commits point to other commits, which are heads inside of the branch you're in, which is your parent file. So anything can be that. So basically, you can create a branch off of main, for example, and that branch is going to point to main as its parent. So yes, that's a pointer. I probably way oversimplified that, but there's a whole huge article here that goes over that. So for the sake of brevity of time of the video, I'm not going to go over that, but basically in a nutshell, like I just said, if your head, it's always, the head, if you're creating a new branch, that branch's head, if it has no children, its head's going to be the commit of the parent of main. If, for example, if you're using generic vernacular of your GitHub, so or of your repo project. So again, I'm not going to go through all that, but that's going to be it. So next we're going to move on to another Git lesson. I think it's going to be more hands-on, working with a another repo and just getting more experience. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you're only going to get better with Git by using it and getting stuck. Unfortunately, as much as some people don't feel comfortable getting stuck, that's kind of how you're going to learn. So anyway, short and sweet on the video today. I'm going to keep it at that. So thanks for coming along the journey with me today. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content. And let me know in the comment section what you guys think of Git and what of this lesson in particular and your understanding of it. So with all that said, till next time, see ya!